This large enveloped dsDNA virus is associated with 70% of the initial genital infections by this virus group. Clinically, these infections present with small erythematous papules which progress to open ulcerations. Infections can become latent and recurrent. Which virus is this? A. HIV-2. B. HIV-1. C. HSV-2. D. HSV-1. The answer is C. HSV-2. Herpes simplex type 1 and 2, HSV-1, HSV-2, are both large enveloped DNA viruses which cause latent and recurrent infections. However, HSV-1 is primarily associated with infections of the pharynx, skin, and central nervous system. On the other hand, HSV-2 is primarily associated with genital infections, representing approximately 70% of all such initial infections. HSV-2 infections recur more often as well. Which of the following viral pathogens is associated with genital diseases? A. Respiratory syncytial virus, influenza virus, parainfluenza virus. B. Rotavirus and Norwalk virus. C. Dengue fever virus and Lassa fever virus. D. Coxsackie virus type B and echoviruses. E. Human papillomaviruses and herpes simplex virus type 2. The answer is E. Human papillomaviruses and herpes simplex virus type 2. Genital tract infections by human papillomaviruses is considered a sexually transmitted disease. HPV type 6 and 11 are mostly implicated in genital warts that are found on the squamous epithelium of external genitalia and perianal areas. Intraepithelial neoplasia and carcinoma often result from genital tract infections caused by HPV type 16 and 18. Herpes simplex virus type 2 is a major cause of genital herpes, which is another sexually transmitted disease. Primary infection is accompanied by inguinal adenitis, fever, malaise, myalgia, and lesions on genital areas. Which of the following viral inclusions correspond with the pox virus? A. Owl's eye intranuclear basophilic inclusion body in cells of tissues or urine sediment. B. Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion body in single cells or in large syncytia. C. Paranuclear acidophilic inclusion body in the cytoplasm. D. Guarneri bodies in the cytoplasm of infected cells. E. Negri bodies, intracytoplasmic, in brain tissue. The answer is D. Guarneri bodies in the cytoplasm of infected cells. The inclusion bodies are the stainable structures found within the nucleus or cytoplasm of the host cell. Inclusion bodies result from the histological changes caused by the presence of viral components or the changes in the cell structure mediated by the infecting virus. The detection of the inclusion bodies by microscopic examination can be used for laboratory diagnosis of the viral infection, as they are characteristic for particular viral infections. Guarneri bodies are inclusion bodies, associated with infection with the pox virus. The scraping of cells from the lesion is stained and examined microscopically. Guarneri bodies appear as acidophilic inclusions in the cytoplasm of infected cells. Which of the following viral inclusions correspond with the herpes simplex virus? A. Owl's eye intranuclear basophilic inclusion body in cells of tissues or urine sediment. B. Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion body in single cells or in large syncytia. C. Guarneri bodies in the cytoplasm of infected cells. D. Paranuclear acidophilic inclusion body in the cytoplasm. E. Negri bodies, intracytoplasmic, in brain tissue. The answer is B. Cowdrey type A intranuclear inclusion body in single cells or in large syncytia. The inclusion bodies are the stainable structures found within the nucleus or cytoplasm of the host cell. Inclusion bodies result from the histological changes caused by the presence of viral components or the changes in the cell structure mediated by the infecting virus. The detection of the inclusion bodies by microscopic examination can be used for laboratory diagnosis of the viral infection, as they are characteristic for particular viral infections. Cowdrey type A inclusions are intranuclear inclusion bodies characteristic of infection with varicella zoster virus, VZV, or herpes simplex virus, HSV. These inclusions can be found in single cells or in large syncytia. Examination of the HSV-infected cells in tissues or smear reveals giant cells with characteristic intranuclear inclusions that are acidophilic and are known as Cowdrey type A inclusions. Cowdrey type A inclusions are also seen in skin lesions, respiratory specimens, or organ biopsies in the cytological examination of cells infected with VZV. Which of the following is true of human adenoviruses? A. They are enveloped viruses with helical nucleocapsid. B. Genome consists of a circular single-stranded RNA. C. Replication occurs in the cytoplasm. D. Forms acidophilic intracytoplasmic inclusions. E. Encodes for its own DNA polymerase. The answer is E. Encodes for its own DNA polymerase. Adenoviruses are non-enveloped viruses with an icosahedral nucleocapsid. The capsid contains 12 pentons at each vertices with 12 fibers projecting from the vertices. The genome is a linear double-stranded DNA with terminal protein. Viral attachment proteins are present in the fibers projecting from the vertices of the virions. The additional characteristics of adenovirus include the following: the virions replicate in the nucleus. Encode proteins to promote mRNA and DNA synthesis, including its own DNA polymerase. Infects epithelial cells lining respiratory and enteric organs. Virus can become latent in lymphoid tissue and can be reactivated by immunosuppression or infection with other agents. Forms basophilic intranuclear inclusions within an infected epithelial cell. Last, they are commonly associated with respiratory diseases, adenoviral pneumonia, epidemic keratoconjunctivitis, and pharyngoconjunctival fever. What is the viral agent associated with progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy in immunocompromised patients? A. Herpes simplex virus. B. Parainfluenza 1. C. Coxsackie virus A. D. JC virus. E. Lassa fever virus. The answer is D. JC virus. JC virus is a papavirus associated with progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy, PML, in immunocompromised patients, including AIDS. PML is a subacute demyelinating disease of the central nervous system, which is primarily seen as a complication of advanced disseminated malignant conditions, such as Hodgkin's disease or chronic lymphocytic leukemia. The patient presents with multiple neurological symptoms. The symptoms are not attributable to a single anatomical lesion. Clinical manifestations include impairment of vision, speech, and coordination that can lead to paralysis and death. Human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, is an enveloped human retrovirus of the lentivirus family. There is also a significant number of HIV-infected individuals who never become sick, never experience a decline in their CD4 counts, and never develop high plasma loads of viral RNA. The reasons that these individuals never become sick include host factors such as the presence of mutations that provide resistance to HIV, such as which of the following mutations? A. CCR5. B. CXCR4. C. IL-8. D. MAC1. E. SDF1. The answer is A. CCR5. CCR5 is necessary for HIV entry into the host cell. CCR5 is expressed by macrophages, dendritic cells, and CD4 T cells. It is thought to be the major co-receptor for establishing primary infection, since individuals who are homozygous for a mutation in CCR5 appear to be resistant to infection by HIV. For example, the CCR5 delta 32 deletion mutation seems to confer resistance against HIV-1 by blocking its attachment to CCR5 so that HIV cannot gain entry to the cell. Development of drugs directed at chemokine receptors is thus an active area of research. Which group should not receive the flu virus annually? A. Pregnant women. B. Healthy adults older than 18 years old. C. The elderly. D. None of these groups should receive the flu virus annually. E. All of these groups should receive the flu virus annually. The answer is E. All of these groups should receive the flu virus annually. The flu virus can be either live attenuated or inactivated. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, recommends giving the flu virus annually to healthy adults, pregnant women, and children older than 6 months of age. The virus is different from year to year, and the vaccine each year represents the most common active forms of the virus. Vaccination is a type of primary prevention. Which of the following is the correct sequence of viral replication? A. Penetration, attachment, protein synthesis, uncoating, assembly, and release. B. Attachment, penetration, uncoating, protein synthesis, assembly, and release. C. Penetration, uncoating, attachment, protein synthesis, assembly, and release. D. Attachment, uncoating, penetration, protein synthesis, assembly, and release. E. Uncoating, attachment, penetration, protein synthesis, assembly, and release. The answer is B. Attachment, penetration, uncoating, protein synthesis, assembly, and release. Viral replication takes place in several stages. Once the virus recognizes the target cell, it binds to the cell. The viral attachment protein present on the surface of virion interacts with the cell receptor. Following attachment, the virus can penetrate the cell by process of endocytosis or fusion. In the step of uncoating the capsid, the envelope is removed and viral nucleic acid is released inside the host cell, so the viral genes become available for transcription. What mold produces aflatoxin, a common contaminant in peanuts, peanut butter, pistachios, Brazil nuts, and corn products? A. Cladosporium. B. Aspergillus. C. Penicillium. D. Mucor. The answer is B. Aspergillus. Aspergillus flavus is a mold species commonly found in peanut butter and many other foods. It produces aflatoxin, a toxin linked to increased risk of liver cell cancer. The other mold species listed are not considered to be related to liver cancer. Cladosporium species are rarely harmful to humans. Penicillium species produce antibiotics, which we commonly use to treat infections. Mucor species cannot grow in warm temperatures, and are unable to infect humans, with the exception of certain heat-tolerant strains, which may cause some zygomycosis. Which of the following is a fungus that may be responsible for certain cases of diaper rash? A. Sporothrux. B. Blastomyces dermatitis. C. Nemocystis girovicii. D. Candida albicans. E. Aspergillus fumigatus. The answer is D. Candida albicans. Candida albicans is a fungus present in the normal flora of humans. An overgrowth of this fungus may cause yeast infections of the skin, vagina, or mouth. After a child receives antibiotics, they may contract a mycotic diaper rash due to Candida albicans overgrowth since the normal bacterial flora have been eliminated by the antibiotics. Nemocystis girovicii may cause nemocystis pneumonia. Blastomyces dermatitis and Aspergillus fumigatus may cause lung infection if the spores are inhaled. Lastly, Sporothrix may cause a skin infection called sporotrichosis after it enters through a break in skin integrity. Which of the following human body systems are prions most likely to affect? A. The gastrointestinal system. B. The endocrine system. C. The reproductive system. D. The nervous system. E. The cardiovascular system. The answer is D. The nervous system. Prions are infectious protein particles that affect proteins, misfolding them and causing loss of function. They are most commonly found in the brain. Prion diseases are also called transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, TSEs, and include diseases such as mad cow disease and Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease. Which of the following regarding fungi is false? A. Thrush is an example of a fungal infection. B. Fungi are present as normal flora in the human body. C. Fungi are similar to plants in that they contain chlorophyll. D. Yeasts are considered fungi. E. A disease caused by a fungus may be termed a mycotic infection. The answer is C. Fungi are similar to plants in that they contain chlorophyll. Fungi are similar to plants in that they both have cell walls. Fungi have chitin cell walls and plants have cellulose cell walls, but they do not contain chlorophyll. Fungi such as Candida albicans are present in the normal flora of the human body. An overgrowth of fungi can cause mycotic infections such as a vaginal yeast infection, or orally as in thrush. The virus responsible for causing AIDS, HIV, is classified as a retrovirus. Many of the drugs used to treat HIV infection take advantage of a unique sequence of events involved in the replication of retroviruses. In order for HIV to replicate, which of the following steps must occur first? A. The host cell must synthesize reverse transcriptase. B. A. DNA polymerase must be synthesized from the RNA template. C. The viral RNA must be degraded. D. New viral RNA molecules must be synthesized by the viral RNA polymerase. E. The viral RNA must be converted to DNA. The answer is E. The viral RNA must be converted to DNA. A retrovirus is an infectious particle consisting of an RNA genome packaged in a protein capsid, surrounded by a lipid envelope. This lipid envelope contains polypeptide chains, including receptor-binding proteins that link to the membrane receptors of the host cell, initiating the process of infection. In order to replicate, its genetic material, RNA, must first be converted to a DNA molecule by the enzyme reverse transcriptase. This enzyme, which is found in the virus particle, is a DNA polymerase that uses an RNA molecule as a template to synthesize DNA, resulting in an RNA/DNA double helix. The answer is E. Virus reservoirs in mononuclear phagocytes. Mononuclear phagocytes, MNPs, which consist of blood monocytes, tissue macrophages, and dendritic cells, are the main cellular elements responsible for elimination of viral pathogens. At the same time, MNPs are the targets and reservoirs for many viruses. Most noteworthy, the MNPs utilize phagocytosis as the first battle armament against the onslaught. This greatly diminishes the quantity of virus until other aspects of the immune system can be activated. An immunologist studying macrophages performs a series of experiments to study the pathophysiology and immunology of macrophages exposed to viral attack. Which of the following activities in macrophages is counterproductive for cellular defense against viral attack? A. Antigen presentation. B. Phagocytic activity. C. Reduction of viral infection, replication in other cells. D. Cytokine-initiated antiviral activity. E. Virus reservoirs in mononuclear phagocytes. What hormone stimulates a feeling of hunger? A. Gastrin. B. Cholecystokinin. C. Leptin. D. Ghrelin. The answer is D. Ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone produced primarily in the stomach and small intestine. It is secreted when the stomach is empty, triggering a feeling of hunger. When the stomach is stretched, secretion of ghrelin is inhibited. Leptin is a hormone secreted by adipose cells to signal satiety. Gastrin triggers the secretion of stomach acid during digestion, and cholecystokinin, CKK, is a hormone with various roles in the process of digestion, primarily acting as a hunger suppressant and a trigger for the release of digestive enzymes and bile. What is the name of the muscular ring that separates the small intestine from the large intestine? A. Ileocecal sphincter, valve. B. Cardiac sphincter. C. Pyloric sphincter. D. Lower esophageal sphincter. The answer is A. Ileocecal sphincter, valve. The ileocecal sphincter, valve separates the small intestine from the large intestine. The lower esophageal sphincter, also known as the cardiac sphincter, separates the esophagus from the stomach, while the pyloric sphincter separates the stomach from the small intestine. What is the name for the system of coordinated peristaltic waves that slowly sweeps food through the small intestine for digestion? A. Segmentation contractions. B. Mass movements. C. The migrating motor complex. D. None of these. The answer is C. The migrating motor complex. The system of coordinated peristaltic waves that slowly sweeps food through the small intestine for digestion is called the migrating motor complex. Disorderly motion of this complex can result in a wide variety of gastrointestinal complaints such as vomiting, dumping syndrome, bloating, or indigestion. Segmentation contractions mix the contents of the colon for more absorption, while mass movements serve to propel feces towards the rectum. All of the following are main functions of the large intestine except dash. A. Store feces. B. Absorb electrolytes. C. Digest food. D. Absorb water. The answer is C. Digest food. By the time the contents of the digestive tract enter the colon, the majority of food digestion is complete. The colon then serves primarily to absorb water and electrolytes and to prepare feces for excretion. The duodenum wraps around what digestive organ? A. The pancreas. B. The liver. C. The stomach. D. The gallbladder. The answer is A. The pancreas. The duodenum wraps around the pancreas. The portions of the small intestine, in order from superior to inferior, are dash. A. Jejunum, cecum, duodenum. B. Duodenum, ileum, jejunum. C. Ileum, jejunum, cecum. D. Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. The answer is D. Duodenum, jejunum, ileum. The portions of the small intestine, in order from superior to inferior, are the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. The cecum is not a part of the small intestine at all but rather the beginning of the large intestine. What nerve innervates the external anal sphincter? A. Perineal nerve. B. Cluneal nerve. C. Ilioinguinal nerve. D. The pudendal nerve. The answer is D. The pudendal nerve. The pudendal nerve innervates the external anal sphincter and is responsible for a person's ability to voluntarily control defecation. Dysfunction of the pudendal nerve has been associated with fecal incontinence or constipation. The other nerves listed are all part of the pelvic floor but do not directly innervate the anal sphincter. Absorption of nutrients in the small intestine occurs mainly in the underscore. A. Duodenum and ileum. B. Ileum and cecum. C. Duodenum and jejunum. D. Jejunum and ileum. The answer is C. Duodenum and jejunum. The majority of absorption of nutrients in the small intestine occurs mainly in duodenum and the jejunum. The ileum is still a site of some absorption, though it is far less than nutrient absorption in the superior parts of the small intestine. The cecum is part of the large intestine. What vein carries the nutrient-rich blood from the gastrointestinal system to the liver for processing? A. The hepatic portal vein. B. The splenic vein. C. The ileal vein. D. The left gastric vein. The answer is A. The hepatic portal vein. The hepatic portal vein is the main vein that carries nutrient-rich blood from the digestive tract to the liver for further processing. The other veins listed are all smaller veins that drain the stomach, small intestine, and spleen into the portal vein. What is the name of the muscular sphincter that keeps stomach contents from regurgitating into the esophagus? A. Ileocecal valve. B. Upper esophageal sphincter. C. Pyloric sphincter. D. Lower esophageal sphincter. The answer is D. Lower esophageal sphincter. The muscular sphincter that keeps stomach contents from regurgitating into the esophagus is the lower esophageal sphincter. The upper esophageal sphincter separates the esophagus from the pharynx, the pyloric sphincter separates the stomach from the small intestine, and the ileocecal valve separates the small intestine from the large intestine. The most superior part of the stomach is the dash. A. Fundus. B. Rugae. C. Body. D. Pile or cantrum. The answer is A. Fundus. The areas of the stomach, from superior to inferior, are the fundus, the body, and the pile or cantrum. The rugae are folds in the stomach that increase its surface area and expandability. What ligament attaches the liver to the abdominal wall? A. The falciform ligament. B. Ligamentum flava. C. The ligament of Treitz. D. The splenorenal ligament. The answer is A. The falciform ligament. The ligament of Treitz suspends the duodenum, while the splenorenal ligament goes between the left kidney and the spleen. Ligamentum flava are ligaments present in the spinal cord. Which of the following digestive enzymes breaks down starches? A. Lipase. B. Amylase. C. Protease. D. Peptidase. The answer is B. Amylase. Amylase enzymes, produced by the salivary gland and the pancreas, break starch down into simple sugars. Peptidase and protease enzymes break down proteins, while lipase enzymes break down lipids. Which of the following substances helps emulsify fats during digestion? A. Hydrochloric acid. B. Cholecystokinin. C. Bile acids. D. Pancreatic lipase. The answer is C. Bile acids. Bile acids, produced in the liver and stored in the gallbladder, help emulsify fats during digestion. The process of emulsification makes fats collect into small droplets, increasing the surface area of ingested lipids and increasing the ability of pancreatic lipase to break fats down into fatty acids and glycerol. Hydrochloric acid aids in the breakdown of proteins in the stomach, and cholecystokinin is a hormone with a wide variety of functions in the digestive process, including the stimulation of the release of bile, though it does itself not play a role in emulsification of fats. Which of the following would be a normal gastric pH? A. 4.0. B. 1.2. C. 4.8. D. 2.0. The answer is D. 2.0. Normal gastric pH ranges from 1.5 to 3.5. This highly acidic environment aids the stomach in denaturing proteins, a fundamental part of digestion. Where does lipid digestion begin? A. The jejunum. B. The duodenum. C. The ileum. D. The stomach. The answer is B. The duodenum. While a small amount of fat digestion may occur in the mouth via the action of lingual lipase, the majority of lipid digestions begins in the duodenum. The presence of fat in the small intestine triggers release of pancreatic lipase, which enters the duodenum via the pancreatic duct. Fat digestion does not occur in the stomach. Which of the following structures controls the release of pancreatic enzymes and bile into the duodenum? A. The ileocecal valve. B. The sphincter of Oddi. C. The pyloric sphincter. D. The ampulla of Vater. The answer is B. The sphincter of Oddi. The pancreatic duct and common bile duct come together at the ampulla of Vater, allowing for the combination of pancreatic enzymes and bile. This combination is released into the duodenum via the relaxation of the sphincter of Oddi, a muscular ring at the end of the ampulla. The sphincter of Oddi also prevents any backflow of duodenal contents into the ampulla. The pyloric sphincter controls flow of chyme between the stomach and the duodenum, while the ileocecal valve separates the small and large intestine. Lipids are transported out of the digestive tract via what system? A. The circulatory system. B. The lymphatic system. C. The hepatic system. D. The excretory system. The answer is B. The lymphatic system. Lipids are transported out of the digestive system via lacteals, lymphatic capillaries within the villi of the small intestine that absorb fatty acids in the form of chylomicrons. They are then transported through the lymphatic system and re-enter the bloodstream via the thoracic duct. The hepatic system produces bile, a vital part of lipid digestion, but it does not absorb lipids. Nor does the excretory system, which is not really a single system but rather a collection of organ systems including the kidney, skin, liver, and colon. Where is gastrin produced? A. Beta-islet cells of the pancreas. B. Parietal cells of the stomach. C. Chief cells of the stomach. D. G cells of the stomach. The answer is D. G cells of the stomach. Gastrin is produced by the G cells of the stomach. Parietal cells of the stomach secrete hydrochloric acid, while chief cells secrete pepsinogen and chymosin. Beta-islet cells of the pancreas produce glucagon. The hydrolysis of oligosaccharides into disaccharides occurs in what part of the digestive tract? A. The duodenum. B. The stomach. C. The ileum. D. The jejunum. The answer is A. The duodenum. The hydrolysis of oligosaccharides into disaccharides occurs in the duodenum, after the addition of pancreatic amylase from the pancreatic duct. What is the function of gastrin in the digestive tract? A. Increases gallbladder emptying. B. Triggers chief cells to secrete pepsinogen. C. Triggers parietal cells to release HCl. D. All of these are true. The answer is D. All of these are true. Gastrin, a peptide hormone released by G cells of the stomach, has many functions in digestion. It triggers parietal cells to release HCl, it increases gastric motility, it triggers chief cells to secrete pepsinogen, and it stimulates the gallbladder to release bile. Which of the following is not a brush border enzyme? A. Sucrase. B. Lactase. C. Carboxypeptidase. D. All of these are brush border enzymes. The answer is D. All of these are brush border enzymes. The intestinal brush border is the microvilli covered surface of the small intestine. It is where a large part of the digestive process occurs, aided by brush border enzymes such as sucrase, maltase, lactase, and carboxypeptidase. Which of the following is not an enzyme secreted by the pancreas? A. Amylase. B. Insulin. C. Lipase. D. Carboxypeptidase. The answer is B. Insulin. Insulin, while secreted by the pancreas, is not an enzyme. Rather, it is a peptide hormone that plays a role in lipid and blood sugar metabolism. The other enzymes listed are all pancreatic enzymes that play a role in digestion. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates, while lipase and sterolesterase break down fats. Carboxypeptidase is an enzyme that removes the final amino acid group from a protein. What cells of the stomach secrete hydrochloric acid, HCl? A. Chief cells. B. Parietal cells. C. M cells. D. Foveolar cells. The answer is B. Parietal cells. HCl is secreted by parietal cells of the stomach. Chief and foveolar cells of the stomach secrete pepsinogen and mucus respectively, and M cells are not stomach cells, but rather intestinal cells involved in mucosa-associated lymphoid tissues, or MALT. Mastication and peristalsis are examples of what type of digestion? A. Physical. B. Chemical. C. Mechanical. D. Oral. The answer is C. Mechanical. The two main forms of digestion and chemical and mechanical. Mechanical digestion involves the physical crushing, mixing, and breaking down of food particles into small pieces or slurries. Mechanical digestion primarily occurs with mastication and is carried out to some degree by peristaltic contractions of the stomach and intestine. Chemical digestion is the further breakdown of food particles into their molecular parts. This is carried out primarily via enzymes, HCl, and bile. What is a normal transit time for the stomach? A. 10 to 12 hours. B. 10 minutes to 4 hours. C. 5 to 10 minutes. D. 2 to 6 hours. The answer is B. 10 minutes to 4 hours. Stomach transit time varies widely. It can take anywhere from 10 minutes to 4 hours for food to pass through the pyloric sphincter into the duodenum. Transit time in the stomach is affected by the composition of the meal, and by the individual's rate of gastric emptying. Transit time may be shortened due to consumption of liquid or simple carbohydrate foods, or lengthened in the case of consumption of solid food that has a high protein or fiber content. What is the normal transit time of food through the small intestine? A. 3 to 8 hours. B. 8 to 12 hours. C. 12 to 18 hours. D. 1 to 2 hours. The answer is A. 3–8 hours. Normal transit time of food through the small intestine is 3 to 8 hours. This is significantly longer than transit time through the stomach due to the wider variety of digestive processes that occur in the small intestine, including the catabolism of proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, and simple and complex carbohydrates. What is the average transit time of the colon? A. 16 to 24 hours. B. 8 to 16 hours. C. 24 to 32 hours. D. 2 to 4 hours. E. 32 to 48 hours. The answer is E. 32 to 48 hours. The average colon transit time for both adults and children is between 32 and 48 hours. This is significantly longer than the transit times of food through the stomach and small intestine, which averages 4 to 12 hours total. A slow transit time through the colon can be increased by various lifestyle factors such as exercise and hydration, and dietary changes such as an increase in fiber-rich foods and avoidance of food allergies or other constipation triggers. Which of the following structures is the main blood supply to the small intestine? A. Inferior mesenteric. B. Superior mesenteric. C. Right hepatic. D. Left gastric. The answer is B. Superior mesenteric. The main artery supplying blood to the small intestine is the superior mesenteric artery. This vessel branches off the abdominal aorta and supplies the lower part of the duodenum, the ileum, the jejunum, and 2/3 of the transverse colon. The rest of the colon and the rectum are supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery, while the right hepatic and left gastric supply the liver and stomach, respectively. All of the following are salivary glands except A. Submandibular gland. B. Parotid gland. C. Sublingual gland. D. Thymus gland. The answer is B. Thymus gland. We have three main types of salivary glands, the parotid glands, the submandibular glands, and the sublingual glands. The thymus gland is not a salivary gland, and is located in the chest just superior to the heart. Which of the following is the main signaling molecule that acts on salivary acinar cells to increase production of saliva? A. Acetylcholine. B. Epinephrine. C. Dopamine. D. Serotonin. The answer is A. Acetylcholine. The primary signaling molecule that acts to increase saliva production by acini or cells in salivary glands is acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is released by parasympathetic innervation and triggers muscarinic receptors in salivary cells, leading to increased saliva secretion. While serotonin, epinephrine, and dopamine may have some effect on salivation, they are not the primary molecules through which the process is controlled. In what part of the brain is the swallowing center located? A. The medulla. B. The cerebellum. C. The thalamus. D. The cingulate gyrus. The answer is A. The medulla. The swallowing center is not a specific anatomical structure, rather an area of physiological control. The swallowing reflex is primarily controlled by the medulla, and to a lesser degree by the pons. None of the other structures listed play a significant role in deglutition. Which of the following molecules is necessary for absorption of vitamin B12? A. Intrinsic factor. B. Norepinephrine. C. Serotonin. D. Sodium. The answer is A. Intrinsic factor. Dietary vitamin B12 must first form a complex with intrinsic factor, a gastric glycoprotein, before it can be absorbed into the hepatic portal system. Individuals who are unable to produce intrinsic factor are at risk for developing B12-related macrocytic anemia. While the other molecules listed are necessary for a wide variety of digestive and nervous system function, they do not directly control vitamin B12 absorption. Which of the following enzymes breaks down triglycerides in chylomicrons and very low-density lipoproteins, VLDL? A. Hepatic lipase. B. Lipoprotein lipase. C. Colipase. D. Lingual lipase. The answer is B. Lipoprotein lipase. Lipoprotein lipase hydrolyzes triglycerides into 2 free fatty acids and 1 molecule of monoacylglycerol. Hepatic lipase aids in the regeneration of LDL. Colipase is secreted by the pancreas and is an important coenzyme for optimal function of pancreatic lipase. Lingual lipase is a fat-digesting enzyme that is secreted in the saliva and aids in the breakdown of dietary lipids before they are stored in chylomicron form. All of the following large intestine bacteria are considered beneficial except A. Lactobacillus plantarum. B. Streptococcus thermophilus. C. Lactobacillus acidophilus. D. Clostridium difficile. The answer is D. Clostridium difficile. All of the bacterial strains listed have been shown to have beneficial effects on gut and immune health except for Clostridium difficile, a pathogenic bacteria commonly seen in hospital settings after prolonged antibiotic use. Clostridium difficile has been associated with chronic diarrhea, behavioral disorders, and colitis.